Okay, it looks like it's 5:30, folks, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the invocation. Councilman Lee, would you be so kind?
Yep. God, we'd like to ask you for your guidance and wisdom as we make decisions on behalf of the city of North Platte for tonight and for the future. With your guidance and wisdom, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Roll call, please.
Isley?
Here.
Hackensack? Here. Peterson? Here. Lucas?
Here.
Lee?
Here?
Harmon?
Here.
Bleeker?
Here.
Ostendorf?
Here.
All right, a current copy of the Open Meetings Act of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to say a few words. Unfortunately, this is not how I wanted to attend my last meeting by being at home quarantined, but I did want to let you know the governor did allow personnel on a council meeting that had contacted. My wife and I both tested positive for COVID-19 a week or so ago, and our quarantine period has not ended as yet, but the governor has allowed council meetings to be attended by those who have tested positive, and so therefore I'll still be able to at least attend and help along with this council meeting this evening. So thank you for your patience tonight. I really appreciate it, and we'll just go ahead and move forward unless anybody has any questions. I'd like to start with a meeting procedure. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and address and limit remarks to 3 minutes or less. Out of respect to the city employees, we request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or mayor. Excuse me. The individual in violation will be declared out of order. So we'll begin with the consent agenda. All matters under consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. Okay, item number 1 is approved minutes of November 3rd, 2020. Item number 2, place on file treasurer's report for September 2020. Item number 3, send application of Pat J. During as liquor license manager at Love's Travel Stop, number 390, located at 3211 South Newbury Road, to the Liquor Control Commission with no recommendations. And item number 4, approve application by Lazy RW Enterprise LLC for a special designated license on December 5th, 2020, from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Brittany's in the Platte River Mall, 1000 South Dewey Street, for a tasting event.
I move that we approve items 1 through 4 of the consent agenda.
Lawrence?
It's underneath your paper, Glenn.
Too many good things.
Wasn't even thinking about that.
Try again, Lawrence. There you go. Can you see that light?
I think there's a lag in time here. I still see Lawrence's name. There we go.
Okay, it should be up there now.
Okay, yep, looks like motion passes, so thank you, everyone, for that motion passed. On our regular agenda, I believe that I'll need your help here, Terry. I'd like to go into closed session to discuss personnel or potential litigation. Can you help me with that, Terry?
Sure. We have a language for the motion. Is that what you're asking? Do I? Yeah. You want to do it now? You can make the motion.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make the motion with some assistance with the language. Let's see. You're just referring to the language here, Terry?
Or potential real estate
Okay.
purchase or sale.
Okay. I'd move that we go into closed session to discuss real estate purchase or sale.
Yeah, we don't need to vote on that.
I presume that the mayor's on a separate Zoom connection.
Very good.
He has a line there, and then he says he can see the screen, Ed.
But I mean,
He's on
not
a, he's on a phone call.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, yeah, you're right, Ed.
Question is there anybody else on Zoom that should not?
No, there's no one else here.
All right, doors are open, Dwight.
Hey, thank you. We're not back online yet, so, oh, there we go. So are we ready to move forward?
Yes.
Okay. We'll begin with the regular agenda, item number 5, and that will be a public hearing and adopt recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for an amendment to North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 future land use map to amend certain lands from residential, medium density single, duplexes, and multifamily to industrial located at 720 West Front Street and 617 North Oak Street as indicated on the attached map.
I move to adopt the recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for an amendment to the North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 future land use map to amend certain lands from residential medium density single duplex and multifamily to industrial located at 720 West Front Street and 617 North Oak Street as indicated on attached maps.
Second.
I had a couple of phone calls regarding that particular change in the zoning, and there was some concern, not concern, but there was some comments made about how there's been some development in the area. I believe one new house was built within a block of this location, and some upgrades and remodels to existing building homes there. And this one particular homeowner did express some concerns about how this might impact not only the property values, but how it might impact the future improvements of the area. And so after some discussion with the one gentleman, the question was raised, why are we moving this from residential to industrial? Maybe there's another intermediate step that we could go to instead of going to industrial, maybe go to commercial. That would limit the development to some type of an industrial application and thereby degrade the property values. I don't know if that's an option, but it would seem like that if we go, with commercial, the city may have some opportunity to put a little more structure in the development, as with some grassed areas and maybe some landscaping amenities and this type of thing that may not be as deleterious to the existing property or surrounding property values. So I throw that out. I don't know if that's an option, Matt or Judy.
Gentlemen, if you don't mind, before we have this discussion, remember we do have a public hearing, so we should at least allow the public an opportunity to speak before we start discussion.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you, Mayor.
Is there anyone that wishes to move forward and,
Yes, there is.
Yep.
My name is Michael Streeter, and I live at 751 Walnut Street in Sutherland, and I'm the applicant, and I guess just we're moving to rezone this to light industrial on the recommendation of the people at the city that I've spoken to. I know, I believe that there's other lots that along Front Street that have been rezoned to light industrial, which is what we're asking for. And it seems like, kind of seems to be a trend that's been happening with lots along Front Street. So that's kind of the intention of why we bought this lot. Our business is currently located in Sutherland, and we would like to move to the great town North Platte. And so I guess those are the intentions, and to just for future use, put up a shop. We're a small business that just intends to use it for just that, to move our company to North Platte.
Are you staying in Sutherland and growing, or are you just moving 100% to North Platte?
We would likely keep business operations in Sutherland also, just because Sutherland's been pretty good to us, and we want our customers to know that we're still in Sutherland. We work from our residence currently. We've got a garage that we work out of in Sutherland. So you know, we've got 3 employees right now, myself, my wife, and 1 other helper. So, like I said, we're a relatively small company, and, you know, for the foreseeable future, this would be essentially a place to store parts, materials. There wouldn't be much traffic coming and going. And anything we do to the lot right now, in my opinion, would be an improvement, because as it sits right now, it's an empty lot. Just a, you know, empty lot, dirt field, blows dirt and dust at everybody's house in the area, so.
I had a call and somebody was very concerned that, you know, we're gonna grant this for heavy trucks and all this other stuff that's gonna be coming in here. And what I hear from you is, that's not gonna happen. You're gonna have your service trucks, of course.
In which we already park the truck and trailer there once in a while when it benefits us not to drag it back to Sutherland overnight or whatever. So, I mean, basically the traffic that's there already currently is the same traffic that they're gonna see in the area. You know, I don't foresee myself in the next 30 years, 40 years is what I intend to. I intend to do this, run this business for, you know, until I retire. You know, I don't see myself having a shop with 20, 30, 40 employees by any means. You know, we're a small business and just trying to get a location in North Platte.
Maybe this would be a question for Judy, and Ed, you brought it up. Would commercial cover him as well as the light industrial?
Not as easily. I mean, you can do a contractor's office, but then you'd have to go through conditional use also to do that. The reason this was told, that he was told to or suggested to go to industrial is because that's the way that it has been going. You look a couple of blocks to the west, Lusk Heating and Air, there's a zoned industrial. There's a lot of those that we have been zoning industrial right along Front Street. And it makes sense because the railroad's right there. It's all industrial to the north on Front Street. And so it just makes sense to make it
So we already
contiguous.
set a precedence with
We have.
down the street, so.
We have, yes.
And Jude, I believe regardless of zoning, the landscaping requirements apply. Do I have that correct?
Yes, there are setback requirements and landscape requirements, any industrial development. And where he abuts a residential area, there's a larger landscape requirement to the residential portion,
Is there any,
south of the property.
excuse me, is there any fencing required?
Screening, so that can be interpreted as fence or other landscape barriers.
Real quick question. You said you were gonna use it to store what?
You know, electrical supplies, parts.
Inside of a building, or are you gonna store them outside?
You know, we're hoping to build a big enough building we can keep everything inside. But I would imagine there's gonna be times there's things sit outside as well.
I'd like to thank you for coming to North Platte. I think it's pretty neat that you're coming to North Platte. I like the idea that you're a young man and you're wanting to expand your business to our town. Is there any option of having an office in the building, or is it strictly going to be more of a warehouse type of a facility?
Yeah, we're hoping that as we progress that we're able to put an office in there as well and make that our main office location for the address, so that way it's separate from our residential address, which as it currently is.
Do you anticipate, I mean, aesthetics appear to be kind of important to the neighborhood. And so.
Yep, and I've talked with the next door neighbor right to the east of the property there and have a fairly decent relationship with him, I believe. And yeah, you know, keeping the neighborhood looking nice and stuff, yeah, I want the neighbors to, you know, appreciate what we do there as far as, you know, keeping it visually appealing, and that sort of thing.
So you're looking maybe at the building at having some architectural features that would set it apart from just a square box, or, you know, a square box with 18-foot sidewalls.
Yeah, we don't want to just be cutting down weeds all the time. I mean, yeah, some grass and nice sidewalks and.
Maybe a
you know.
porch or something out in front that would identify the office area or something that would set it apart a little
Right,
bit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, building plans are in the future, I guess, yet, but, kinda some sort of, in my mind, I picture some sort of L-shaped building, so the short side of the L could be the office area, cause I know right now we've got just a square garage at home, and the office being in that square area takes up part of our shop area, and kinda to avoid that sort of thing, and, but yeah, we wanna keep it appealing to the neighborhood, and we don't want a bunch of neighbors upset with us, but.
And the size of your vehicles, Mr. Streeter, how big are they gonna be? Are they gonna be like 1-ton trucks with a van box on them, or service trucks with a
So,
service
Yeah,
box?
currently, we've just got a 1-ton, 4-door Ford pickup, with a 16-foot trailer, is what we pull currently. I don't know, I don't really like the big box trucks. But,
So you primarily would have a van box trailer, a box trailer that you would be working out of, and then maybe a service truck or two that would be parked there.
yeah, and then we've got currently another half-ton truck that was,
Okay.
typical ladder rack, typical construction looking vehicle, I guess.
Thank you.
I got a couple phone calls like Ed did about that. Everybody's more than excited, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people are more than excited about that. And about 10 years ago, when I was president of the Habitat for Humanity, boy, I got run out of town on a rail almost.
Yeah, and the neighbor next to me did mention that too, that the Habitat for Humanity wanted to try and purchase that in years past, and that a lot of the neighbors opposed to it. Of course, after I purchased the property, we've had that conversation. But just from looking at what has already kind of been the precedent that's been set down Front Street, Platte Valley Electric's just a couple blocks down the street, Lusk Heating and Air. Hall's Electric was a shop that did the same thing and was rezoned to get in there. Crescent Electric, Snell's Services, Yoshida's Detailing. I mean, there's quite a list of businesses and stuff that are along Front Street already.
Real quick,
Most of Front Street's already industrial, I don't see a problem.
real quick, they're having problems hearing us if you're not speaking close and into the mics right now. I know you guys don't have them, but she was trying to tell us up here, make sure we're speaking into the mic.
Ed, your comments about the transition with commercial, this area sets up real well for light industrial, and like you talked about Platte Valley and Luss, I think light industrial does serve as that transition, in my opinion, from the heavy industrial across the street with the railroad. And so if you were a commercial, I think what's nice about this area is it's affordable light industrial land. So if you're a company that doesn't need a heavy traffic pattern, most of the businesses in the B zonings are looking for that heavier traffic pattern. So this becomes an affordable area for lighter industrial. And then I think that strip along Front Street, I can imagine really serving as that transition layer to the heavy industrial across the street. Just to point out, I know several of us attend the Planning Commission meeting because I was curious if there's much opposition on this, and I think we just had one group that spoke against a resident, and maybe it was two, but there wasn't tremendous opposition at the Planning Commission meeting regarding this subject. I think it's a great use for the lot, and because it's basically the same thing that's going on 2 blocks away at Platte Valley Electric and about 3 or 4 blocks away at Lusk Heating and Air.
Just informational reasons, I mean, those two shops or businesses are, currently, much larger than what we are, much more traffic than what we're gonna bring to the area. And if you looked at numbers, I bet they're doing a lot more business than what we are.
Mr. Streeter, I can attest that it's a dirt lot. I was out there today.
Yeah.
And you probably see my tracks across it. I trespassed, I guess. But I did notice that there's what appeared to be a sewer manhole on the property, maybe towards the left, towards the east to center, about center, north, and south. Do you know what that is?
So, from my understanding, that's the water supply, because we're also, the 2 lots were joining into 1 lot. So I believe the city at some point had run that in there to supply both of those lots. And from my understanding that will be something that we will pay to have the city remove and, I guess, take that back to the street, so our water supply will go back to the street and get that completely out of the center of the lot there.
So that's not a sanitary sewer line or anything like that?
No, I think it's actually where the water meter
Okay.
is, water meter pit currently.
Thank you.
There's any other questions?
There might be some other people.
Dwight,
Thank you, Mr. Streeter. We appreciate your comments.
all right, is there anybody else out there? One more? Okay. Thank you.
My name is Elaine Mulvaney. I own a house a half a block west of the proposed change. And I'm not the only one opposed to this change, but I'm obviously the only one here to speak. I believe some of the other people have called and talked to their representatives. It all sounds real nice and warming and welcoming to bring this new business in. And I welcome them too, but why can't they be in something other than a residential area? There's not much benefit, no benefit, for the people in the surrounding area. And you talk about the trend in the neighborhood. Yes, further on down on Front Street, there have been some industrial businesses. I don't know if they're all zoned industrial or if some of them are just hanging out a shingle and getting by with it, but it's not attractive. They put up a big metal building, a gravel lot. They don't care about the neighborhood. But the people who built that new house just south of this lot, they probably do care. In fact, I talked to them and they do care. There are other houses in the neighborhood that have been improved. People are putting their money into keeping it residential. Oak Street is a through street, all the way down to Phillip. It's residential. Kids walk there on their way to school. I think we should be concerned about their safety. Right now, you're asking him what's his plan for the future. But if you give him industrial zoning, doesn't matter what he promised you here today, he has a wide open range of things that he can do there. It's not right and it's not fair for the people already established in that neighborhood. I'd ask you to keep it residential. Anybody have any questions for me? Okay. Thank you for your time and attention. I almost feel like the decision was made before I got up here.
Thank you for your input. Dwight, do you have anything?
No, I don't, but thank you for your input.
Motion to close public hearing if there's no one else out there?
Second.
Okay. We gotta close the public hearing first.
Public hearing.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah. you s-
Second.
Ed seconds.
Yeah, she heard us say it, but.
There you go.
I have a little bit of lag time, so if you can help me out here.
Looks like it's, the motion did pass 8-0.
Okay, thank you. I believe there is still a motion on the floor to accept this in a second, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Glenn has,
Judy, how much difference would there be if this was made commercial rather than industrial?
Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go commercial because there's not commercial properties that are zoned right around it. So you would have just this one piece of commercial, whereas the others around it are industrial, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Commercial, is a little bit more control of what you can and can't put in there, which is true. Industrial does allow for a little bit larger scale development, like the warehouse, contractor's warehousing unit. In order to do that in a commercial, you have to do a conditional use also. So he would have to come back and do a conditional use, whereas in an industrial, he can just go ahead and do that as long as it goes through the permitting process. You do have to remember that when they get a permit, they are required to put in landscaping, they are required to put in screening, they are required to meet setbacks. that sort of thing. So it's not like he just has an open range to build whatever it is.
Okay, but I hear some of the concern, valid or not, if Mr. Streeter is in there for 15, 20 years and then decides to sell, and then if you have the industrial permit or license, whatever, they could come in and change that property?
Yeah, and that is true. You could, if we leave it the way that we leave it. Now, we do have some thoughts on going back through, we're gonna talk about some rezoning and some land use map amendments and stuff, in the next couple agenda items. But one of the things that we've been toying with, Planning Commission's been toying with some zoning, is doing some mixed-use zoning areas. This would be a prime example of a really good thing to change our zoning and use it like a flex development or a mixed-use type development, which would make it a little bit less intensive of industrial, kind of bring it back down to more of a commercial type with a flex zone in there. I think Front Street would be a remarkable place to do something like that.
Going in there with semi-trailers and cats and all
No.
this type of thing.
But the next guy could, and you're right, yeah.
That was one of the concerns.
If we approve, I'm sorry, if we approve this as light industrial tonight and we come back and change the zoning in that area, can that property be changed as far as that?
Yep,
So that could be moved into that
we could come back with some sort.
mixed use, I think you called it,
Yep,
which would limit the industrial part of it as
Yeah.
far as development is concerned, but it would still allow for the commercial development like Mr. Streeter's proposing today.
yep. I think there's a lot of call, especially along that Front Street area and some other portions, like along Rodeo Road in North Platte, where a flex or a mixed-use development makes a lot more sense.
I think that makes some sense to me, Glenn. I don't know about you.
Does that sound like something that would work for you, Mr. Streeter?
Yeah, I mean, essentially for me, I don't wanna be, I'm just trying to avoid being required to have the bathroom and all that sort of stuff in there immediately. It's all stuff that I want to have in there, commercial, like, if there's no commercial, I think that's one of the requirements, you have to have a usable restroom and all that. And, that's one of the things that, for me, is just gonna be, more of a financial hurdle to get all that completed, within the timeframe that construction requires. Essentially, I wanna have, be able to put a building up where I can put belongings, electrical equipment, and, expensive things that we need to keep on hand and have a place to park it inside so it's secured and, maybe put cameras on it or whatever. So I guess that's kind of what I'm needing.
So what you're telling us, Judy, then is that we can go ahead and zone this industrial now, but we can come back and change it later or to meet his needs.
You bet. There's no reason why you can't.
Okay, real quick, so I did have, Judy, you might have something to say on the end, but, I had 5 phone calls. So I told them 4 of them because 3 of them have COVID and the other one was had a health issue where they don't like to go outside due to COVID and it would be, not good for them. So I told them that I would say what they told me back to you guys. I will try to paraphrase it so I don't summarize 2 hours worth of phone calls word for word. But, the biggest concerns for a lot of them were definitely, the idea of traffic. Whether or not how many employees he's going to have or whatever. I mean, we can't regulate that after we change the zoning on it. He could decide he wants to hire 10 new electricians or not. But, that's fine. That's his prerogative. It's his business to figure out, how much work he has and so on. But they were also worried, definitely. My mic, okay. My mic went out again, sorry. And then the other thing, one of the other things was they were worried about, kids trying to get through the streets. I don't have as much of an issue with that personally, but that was one thing that was relayed to me several times. The other thing is this jump that's happening. So right now, if you go west, it's 5 blocks until you hit the next industrial lot over there. From this one, and then it's 3 blocks to the east. So we're kind of cutting into the middle of what's still left of that residential, and yeah, I mean, if they keep coming block in, block in, block in, it's eventually going to get there anyway. But it's just kind of that we're essentially throwing gasoline onto the process here of these people who have bought houses in the middle of this residential section, and so it's skipping from, going from block to block to block and getting closer to them in this spot, which is probably about a block over, to be half and half. But, we're putting it right in the middle. So now it's like having matches going, 4 different directions, getting rid of what's left of this little bit of residential over there. I know it would make me feel more comfortable, to vote in favor if I knew that the way it reads in there is screening is required, and that's whatever is determined down there with the building side. That scares me a little bit, just because, okay, maybe they put up a chain link fence, okay, that's see-through and doesn't really block any noise. They put up a privacy fence. Yeah, it blocks some of the visual issues for the neighbors there that have houses along there. Let's say they just put up some trees or bushes or something like that. That's, the best case scenario, I would suppose, that would block the most amount of noise and stuff like that. Not that we're going to block all the noise. I know it's right next to the railroad. But, I think we got to make sure that we're doing, when moving this, since there are houses there, as we do this, we got to make sure that there's appropriate protections for their houses that are on the other side of the street, like on that other half the block, from, him doing, I don't know, construction-y things. Not saying that you're not going to be there in 10 years, but let's say he decides that, he needs a bigger shop in 10 years, goes buys a new one, sells this one off to some other guy who has a bunch of really loud equipment. We're not protecting those neighbors, into the future by making sure I want to make sure that we have enough screening. That's all I want to protect and insulate, the people that have houses around there from noise and seeing debris. So that way, hopefully, in case they want to sell their house or they want to live in that house for the next 10, 15, 20 years, that they have some peace of mind that there is a visual and as much of a sound barrier as we can create, from any kind of business. Not saying that it's not going to be, that you might be good, but, like I said, maybe you want to decide to get a bigger shop somewhere else in town or whatever, that whoever is in that spot is being shielded and buffered enough from the people who have houses right there. They have built several new houses along Front Street in that area. They have been remodeling those houses. If you've driven that, you've seen a lot of that. So those were a lot of the concerns that were issued to me. I agree with, that we need to make sure that we're protecting the neighbors that live next to there, but I also understand the need to keep developing these lots, and it's eventually going to get there, but we're jumping right into the middle of what's left of that residential spot. 5 blocks, 3 blocks, we're almost right in the middle here when we're choosing to throw, the next industrial piece in versus letting it come in block by block until it closes that gap. That's it.
I guess one final comment from me is that I think we need to remember this to me is an area that's been clearly transitional for many years. So I think anybody that's opted to invest in this area has seen in front of them that this is a converting commercial area, and it's literally directly across the street from the railroad property and on a main thoroughfare. I'm not aware after the fact of, for example, Lusk Heating and Air, and I think they were recently zoned, and that's again about five blocks. I think you're right, and you're about 3 blocks up to Platte Valley Electric. But I don't think we've had complaint issues at the city that I'm aware of. I just don't think this is as. I mean, I appreciate the concerns that the immediate residents have. I just don't think this is as outline a request as it sounds, because I think this is clearly a transitional area into light industrial.
Another question. I talked to somebody and he said, yes, but then the bank won't, if we need a loan on our house, the bank won't give us a loan because of that industry being there. Is that factual, or is that something somebody dreamt up?
Well, if somebody had a property appraised, then that appraisal, that's what's used for collateral for a loan, at least at the bank I work for, and I think most banks. And in that, they would state the zoning of the property. And if a property had some kind of deterioration of value or anything like that because of a neighboring property, which I really haven't haven't seen around here, then that would all enter into the projected value of that property. And I'm not aware of a situation like this where we've seen valuation decline. But I think the issue would be more what the value conclusion would be. Not, I've never heard of somebody not being able to get a loan because it's next to something.
Just one more statement I'd like to make too, is consistency. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Consistency to the fact that in the past, we've changed zoning to light industrial in that area. Now, if we go and change it again, looking down the road, it's inconsistent to what we've been saying in the past of what we're doing in that area. And I think it should stay the same. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I don't see a problem with this being light industrial because that's the trend of what Front Street's going to. So if we would then, 5, 10, 15 years ago, we made changes in our zoning down the 3 or 4 blocks down the road to light industrial. Now we're gonna change this one to commercial. I don't see why, I like the consistency part of an area. If we're gonna say this is light industrial, let's keep the whole thing light industrial. Agreed.
I have a question for Mr. Streeter. Did I understand you correctly that you're not gonna have restrooms in this building?
No, I guess, immediate, when we first built the building, I would imagine it'd be, at least a couple of years down the road before we would, be able to finish a restroom or, have the finances to, complete all the construction on the inside of the building.
I guess, in my own mind, you live in Sutherland and you're gonna be coming back and forth and working in North Platte, and nature calls occasionally. How are you gonna handle that? That, and I'm not trying to get personal or be anything like that, but,
I mean, there's services such as putting an outhouse
Okay.
or driving down the street to Casey's.
okay, right.
Also, in my business, we don't sit and work there all day long. If we're sitting at the shop all day long, we're not out on the job site making any money, so it doesn't do us much good to sit and shop all day long.
And I understand that. Okay.
One other thing I had just maybe address concern is somebody said something about pulling like a semi truck in there, not for me, but for maybe somebody buys it from me down the road. If anybody looked at the size of that lot, I would think anybody that has that type of large equipment, wouldn't have any interest in that lot because there's not enough room to park one semi, let alone a semi and any other large equipment. So just as far as any kind of concern like that, just the size of that lot wouldn't really, in my mind, wouldn't interest anybody that owns that size of equipment.
On the other hand, people who think a business wouldn't be interested in a residential lot.
Okay, is there further discussion?
There is a chance that later on, if this doesn't work out, if we can change it, then I don't see a problem. But it doesn't sound like he's gonna go in there gangbusters and start putting up buildings and be all gonna be done in a year or a year and a half. And then if he has to bring it back, he can bring it back and we can change it. And if the neighbors don't like it, we can change it at least with some of their liking.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you zone it for him now, you're not gonna go back later and unzone it so that he can't have what he's already got permission to build. It doesn't work that way.
I've been told it does work that way.
I'm sorry.
Just now.
Then he's told.
There's the person.
If he gets permission for this, can you go back later and tell him he can't do what you just told him to do?
I think what the conversation was the possibility of changing it to something other than industrial. And Planning Commission is working on doing some rezoning, and Front Street is one of those really prime areas that we've looked at of doing some flex-type zoning. So I think that's where the conversation was. So, yeah, would it not allow him to do what he's doing? No, it would allow him to do that, but maybe keep him from doing something more industrial, if that makes sense.
How far away is planning commission on that process? 6 months? A year?
I would love to say 6 months. It's probably a year.
6 months to a year, somewhere in there, 9 months to a year.
Yeah, probably a year. Yeah.
And he's not gonna start digging tomorrow either.
Just for clarification for me, are we voting on 5
Yes.
now? So this is, we're voting on, so what we're voting on now is 5, and that's the
Yes.
motion to adopt the recommendation. Okay. Glenn? Okay, Dwight is 7 votes yes, 1 no.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 6. And that is a public hearing and adopt a recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission on ordinance number 4049 to rezone certain lands from R2 dwelling district to I-1 light industrial district located at 720 West Front Street and 617 North Oak Street.
And this is a public hearing, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? If so, please step up towards the podium.
There's no one stepping to the podium, Mayor.
Okay, I would accept
Wait,
someone to
sorry.
make a motion
No, that's-
to close.
We have somebody.
We have somebody come up, Dwight. Somebody come
Oh,
up.
okay, thank you.
It's me again, Elaine Mulvaney, and this is the same issue that we're speaking of in the recommendation because this is the lot that they're wanting to change, and it is the one that affects the neighborhood. Where I see the trend as an improvement in residential, other people see the trend a few blocks down, industrial, and I understand that, but it's going to hurt the neighborhood. It's going to increase traffic and noise. We don't even know what kind of electrical work this company does. Are they domestic? Are they residential? Are they going to be building turbines for the railroad? We don't know. What are they going to build? We don't know. They haven't actually issued a plan of what they're going to build. When you give them permission by going industrial, you're not limiting them. You can't come back later and say to them, oh, we didn't mean that. It's not fair and it's not right.
Thank you for your comments.
I now move to close public hearing.
Did you hear that, Dwight?
I did, yes.
Dwight, the vote on that was 8 yes, no opposition.
Okay,
Close
thank
public
you.
hearing.
Public hearing's been closed.
If somebody wants to try to waive the 3 readings, they can. I don't want to do it, though.
Here, I'll give you one item.
I would just say that, there's a new council on the way literally in 2 weeks, and they might have some input that they would want to do on this too. It's the 2 mics hitting it.
Is it feedback?
It's feedback from 2 mics hitting it. Well,
Are you gonna make a motion?
I'll make it for a single vote.
You mean to waive the 3 readings? No, just to have a single vote? Okay. It's on page 24 if you want to.
Okay, I move to adopt ordinance number 4049 to rezone certain land from an R2 dwelling district to an I1 light industrial district on first reading.
Second.
Point of order, do we need to read that ordinance real quick out in public for the law, or to be legal?
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Mayor Livingston, would you like me to read the ordinance?
Yes, please.
An ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, rezoning the north 76 feet of Lot 4, Block 95, original town of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and the south 56 feet of Lot 4, Block 95, original town of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, from R2 dwelling district to an I1 light industrial district, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Is there time for any more discussion?
There's a discussion, yes, there is right now.
What is the reason for going on a single reading instead of our normal 3?
No, it's 3.
It's 3. Well, I didn't feel comfortable suspending. I just feel like there's a new council in 2 weeks that somebody else is elected to fill some of these seats, and so they might have some opinions on it themselves. So that's why I wouldn't want to waive it.
So you did not waive?
Did not waive it.
There's no waiving, it's on the motion.
I really
First
think
reading.
you're on the right track
Yeah.
on this one,
I
Andrew. I
agree.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree.
This is to approve it on first reading.
Yeah.
Okay, got
Well,
it.
there's some fair concerns out there.
Yeah,
From-
that's fair. Dwight, that motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward to item number 7. And this is also a public hearing and adopt a recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for amendment to the North Platte, Nebraska Comprehensive Plan 2011, Chapter 10, Land Use and Development, and Chapter 11, Annexation.
This is a public hearing.
Judy Clark, Planning Administrator. I just wanted to get up and just let you know that this is a project that the Planning Commission's been working on for probably about the past 6 to 8 months. This is an amendment to the comprehensive plan, Chapter 10 and Chapter 11. And basically, again, I just want everybody to understand that this is just a comprehensive plan. This is not a annexation. We're not going to annex anybody tomorrow. This is just putting a comprehensive plan together, looking at it, showing some areas that are possible future annexation areas, some things that are prime for development, some areas of town that look like they should probably be a part of the city, that sort of thing. We've worked with Marvin Planning Consultants for the past about 6 to 8 months. He is here in the audience too if you have any questions. And I do have 2 separate maps. The one Planning Commission approved, the other one was in between Planning Commission and coming here. Staff kind of got to talking a little bit about the possibility of adding an additional area. So we would like you to take a look at that one. And if it does behoove you to go ahead with that second one, that was fine. But I just want to make sure that you understand that Planning Commission adopted the recommendation for the one that's attached to the plan, and then that second map is the one that staff just put out there thinking that that would actually be maybe an additional item to consider. Yes.
Page 35, if you look at that map, that would extend our 2-mile jurisdiction, right, if you did all that?
Well, with the 2-mile jurisdiction, what we would do with that is we would wait a little while. You don't want to do annexation and then immediately extend your 2-mile
So it doesn't automatically move?
jurisdiction. What was that?
It doesn't automatically move?
No,
Okay, I was curious about that.
no.
Okay, because that way, you know, there's enough time for those farmers and ranchers in those areas to, you
Yes.
know, like, have time to process what's happening, and we don't shell shock them, I guess.
Exactly. We want everybody to make sure that there's enough time to discuss and think and analyze before we do anything.
Mayor Livingston, members of council, I know it's a public hearing, but just for reference, those maps are on pages 58 and 59 of your packet.
Thank you, Matt, I wondered about that. Is everybody here to,
My name's Scott Erickson with Weathercraft Roofing Company. We own the property that's part of one of these areas that are looked at for being annexed. I do have a handout, if it's all right to pass those around, or if not.
yes, you may.
There's 2 pages. There's a bold. The first page has got some kind of a bold at the top, and then there's a second page.
Mayor, they're passing out some handouts.
Yes, thank you.
And I do understand that this is an annexation plan and not a, you know, move to annex. But I also wanted to bring up some points opposing at least our area of it being annexed by the city. I think everybody in this room wants the same thing. I think we want North Platte to grow and to prosper. You know, me and my business partner are both from North Platte, lifelong residents, and we've been here, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s and watched other communities grow like Kearney and Grand Island. And North Platte has stayed pretty much the same population during that time frame. I think that's other factors involved with that, but I also put a list on this handout of some of the major employers, just using Kearney as an example, and what their contribution is to their towns. If you see the companies at the top of the list are obviously the backbone of Kearney and North Platte. But I also bolded some there. The bolded ones are homegrown corporations that they have their corporate headquarters within North Platte. In my opinion, and I think everybody would agree, some of the best ways to grow our community is to lure other businesses to our community using TIF or other incentives. But another way to do it is to partner with the homegrown corporations that also have offices in other locations, and the excess revenue that corporation generates, comes back to North Platte and is invested in our community here. So instead of the excess revenue flowing out of our community, excess revenue can flow into our community. I think Kearney has done this to some degree with the Buckle and Cashway, helped partner with those organizations to, help them grow. There's another example on here, obviously, back Walmart in 1962, Rogers in Bentonville, that's where my wife's from, was a population of 7,700 and has grown to over 120,000. And I'm not saying there's any Walmarts on this list, but that's just an example of partnering with those corporate locations in a community. Weathercraft ourselves, as people may not know, we've increased our corporate jobs from 9 to 16 just since 2005 and moved over 15 families to the North Platte area. We're looking to continue to expand by adding offices at the location that is on here on the annexation plan. Just in our corner, we also have Central Nebraska Packing that has the second largest zoo producer. Talked with them today. They are just concerned about what city limits and rules would mean for them. Also, we have the North Platte Stockyards that has just reopened in the last year or so. That sat empty for many years. Talked with him today as well, and he had some concern about having all of his cattle operate, buying and selling all these cattle within city limits. Weathercraft, one thing that may not be known about annexing our organization is we have 16 locations in 5 states. We move a lot of material through this land. We're an option 2 contractor. So we pay tax on material that comes in to our warehouses and then is moved out to other locations. So if our land was annexed, that would increase our tax burden as far as material and make us less competitive on bid situations. We bid against commercial roofing companies out of Kearney, Omaha, Denver for very large projects like the jail and other large flat roof projects. We've seen some of those projects come down to a $400,000 bid come down to $500. So it will affect us a little bit in that way. Our business plan using this option 2 contract was not really prepared for the possibility. I mean, I guess it was there because the city is close for us being annexed. So I guess that's one thing that we hadn't really considered until now in the annexation plan. That, in addition to what's currently happened with the COVID environment, as we're all sitting here wearing masks, we lost $1 million in contracts in March and April and May, and we've overcome that, but right now it's really about workforce and trying to get people to show up for work. That's really been our major challenge here the last 3 months. So that's kind of a side note. I know that doesn't affect the annexation long-term, but maybe the timing of it, doing it quickly, well, we're still trying to recover from the COVID and its effects. So that's all I had to say, and be happy to answer any questions. We like it here.
So essentially, you're not in favor of it because you go from paying the county tax to county plus city.
And that would affect, then we would raise our pricing and would affect us against competition in the region.
Okay.
So, and the fact that there's industry, we're basically a distribution area. We have hot tar kettles that smell. Our neighbors have cattle a lot. I mean, I guess part of it too is that really part of a city plan to bring those in?
You're already within the 2-mile rules of what you have to follow anyway, so as long as you're complying within those rules already, those things I don't think would change any, because you're already having to stay within our zoning and all of our requirements on that front. So I couldn't see that there'd be any change unless we would change ordinances to something, but then most of those things are grandfathered in regardless.
Okay.
But, I mean, from my point of view. So, but, I mean, so I'm just trying to figure out what the real thing is just that you don't think it allows you to be competitive.
Right, so our business plan for these 16 locations in 5 states, not all of them run their material through North Platte, but a lot of them do. So we would have to be forced to look at moving our, if it did make us a competitor, I'm not saying we would definitely do it, because we like North Platte and obviously support anything that grows the community. But if we did start to become less competitive, it would be something we'd have to look at to move our warehouses, outside of city limits or to another place. So we don't want to do that, definitely, but it would be something we'd have to look at.
Scott, have you done any estimates as to how much additional property tax you might incur?
I have not on the property tax side of it. We were more concerned on the sales tax side and what that would, how that would impact our business.
Can't you change your designation so that the receiver would pay the tax?
Yeah, so that's the difference between option 2 and an option 3 contractor. So an option 3 contractor, you can get the material non-tax and then charge the end user. We've always, because we've been option 2 for the last 44 years, it's been a good business model for us, especially with our multiple locations in McCook, Broken Bow, Lexington, Ogallala, Grand Island, that we bring it in here and then ship it out to other communities. And then, so we pay it all at kind of the distribution warehouse side.
And certainly make your accounting a lot simpler to do it that way.
Yeah, it does. And we went through an audit about 10 years ago and were checked and everything was, on the up and up. It's, we just chose that for the simplicity of it.
Sure.
And we do end up paying tax on material that's wasted. I think the state likes to, and everybody get their tax dollars up front versus at the end user. Any other questions?
Are you on city water?
We are, yeah. I'm not sure when it was put in, well before the time that me and my business partner bought the land to continue to grow. So there is city water out there.
You're on city sewer too?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions of Scott? Okay, thank you. Any other persons to, yes, please approach them and state your name and address.
Business or my home address or what?
Your home address.
My home?
Yes.
I'm Teresa Kelly at 1418 North Jackson Avenue, North Platte, Nebraska.
And you do operate a business?
2 of them,
Okay.
3 of them.
What are they?
There's TK's Welding and Fabrication, TK Crane Service, and Kelly's Custom Pack.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Kelly's Custom Pack, I have a real concern because we kill livestock, and I know it's a 2-mile radiation, but radius or whatever you guys say, but the problem that I have, if we ever resell that business, we'll be grandfathered in, but if you ever resell this, we won't ever be able to resell it as a packing plant to slaughter animals. And I mean, we do buffalo to ostrich to goats to cows to pig. I mean, we're in deer season right now, and we do the Hunter Henry program, and we've already taken over 200 deer already in 3 days. And if we get into the city limits, I don't know if we ever resell it, if we'll ever be able to sell it. I mean, our business won't be there. I mean, you'll have a building with 2 freezers and a cooler. And I don't know how you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And the TK's Welding, we get a lot of business like with trucks and things like that, and where we don't have to pay the city sales tax, or they don't, the customer, there's a lot of competition with welding in this town, so it does help us a lot for our customers. And with the crane, we have a 165-ton crane service, and we do a lot of business with the crane with people. If it's moving houses to a foundation, or the Union Pacific Railroad, or holding a bridge, or anything with the crane, it just helps the customers, and we don't have to pay, when they don't have to pay the city tax.
Okay. Any questions? Ed?
Yes, I have a question. You mentioned that if you wanted to sell the business, it wouldn't be able to be operated as a packing plant.
Not to slaughter, because in the city limits, you're not supposed to be able to shoot or have livestock.
Is that the way our statutes and ordinance are written?
It would be fine.
Forever? It's fine forever?
It's fine, yes.
Where's that at? Because when I read it, it's not.
Because you're there, you're an existing use, and it's zoned appropriately, and so that existing use can continue to stay. Even if the property is sold to somebody else, it can continue to stay.
It's still grandfathered in.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if it's with the family or not? It's
No.
for anybody?
No, it goes with the property.
Okay, so when I read that I read it, it said that you couldn't, so,
Good.
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Just to get clarification on that, Judy, so in that situation, if they ceased that business activity for like 12 months or whatever time frame and restarted it, then there'd be a problem, but as long as it's continuous?
Yeah, I would have to go back and see what our zoning regulations read exactly, but yes.
It's like 6 or 12 months or
It's 12
something like that,
months. If you cease using that property for what it is currently being used at for more than 12 months, then it could revert to some other zoning. But the way that that's zoned and the way that it's there, I would have to assume that it would be allowed to stay. So,
I presume the council would still have some jurisdiction over that in the future if that would, let's say it did set for a year and was unsold and somebody bought it and wanted to come back and reestablish it as a packing or slaughterhouse, that the council could work around that difficulty.
conditional use, yes.
I just want to say too, we help a lot of the fairs, the county fairs. I mean, we kill a lot of animals for the county fair, you know, for the kids to raise 4-H animals and stuff. And I mean, we're not going to live forever, so, I mean, that's just a concern.
No,
It's a valid one.
valid concern.
Thank you.
Please state your name and your address, sir, please.
My name's Ed Milne. I live at 1610 West Fifth. I operate and own EJ's Outdoor Sports along with my wife. We are at 1711 East 8th. We moved out there 18 years ago. The reason why we moved out there was outside the city limits. That's what we wanted. I've got city water. I've got city sewer. It was put in before we ever moved out there. I'm just a small business person. And you add more sales tax onto us and more taxes onto us, it just creates another problem down the line. And Yamaha uses us as a kind of a hub. They bring golf cars in semis, and then we disperse them out to golf courses. So we got a lot of semi-traffic coming in and out, not all the time, but more in the spring than any other time. And I'm just here to voice my opinion. I don't want to be X'd in. I want outside the city limits, and that's why I did it the way I did. And I don't have nothing else to say, so. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Hello.
Please state your name and address, please.
Penny Billingsley. I reside at 520 East 9th Street here in North Platte. And my husband Randy and I own Garden Glove and the Coffee Bin. We have about 12 acres of light industrial land on East 12th Street from 1600 East 12th to 1900 East 12th. And then we L over and go on over to the 1900 block of East 10th Street. We don't want to be put into the city limits. When we built our coffee shop a few years ago, we were wanting to tie into the city sewer. That turned out to be kind of a fiasco, because when we talked to city officials, there was no infrastructure put in on East 12th Street when the new highway was put in. So we ended up having to install a well and a septic system for that, for our new business endeavors. And I had asked at the time, why was there no infrastructure put in when the new highway went in? And I was told that at that time that there was never any plan to annex our area into the city limits. We're already within the 2-mile zone. We already know that. We still have to comply by all the building codes, everything that that everybody inside city limits has to comply by. And I feel bad because I appreciate you guys talking to us tonight, because we really did not have any notification. We probably would have approached the Planning Commission, and maybe we could have worked out some other, got some more information. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to at least listen to all of our concerns tonight. I know it makes for a long meeting. So with that being said, we are a very small business. When we were building our coffee shop, we had actually inquired about quality growth funds. We were told by a person on that board that we were not in a desirable area of the city, and that we probably would not qualify for those types of funds, because we were actually wanting some help with a sewer line. So we chose to do it on our own, and it cost us quite a bit of money to do that. So for us, our business personally would not benefit from any type of city water or sewer, because we already have those. We've already paid for those, and we don't need them. The other thing that is very concerning to us is we have to compete with businesses in city limits, and meaning big box stores, corporate-owned coffee shops. So when our property, if our property ever got annexed into the city limits, that would increase the cost of our product to our customers. And right now, if you look at the map and you see where we're at, there really is no reason for customers to go out there. They come out here, they go out to our coffee shop to get a good cup of coffee, good customer service. They shop at our garden center. And yes, they are saving money by not having to pay that 1.5% sales tax. But that is actually beneficial for us, obviously. You guys are all businessmen, you understand that. So what it could do, ineffectively, which everybody thinks 7 cents isn't that much, but on a $5 cup of coffee, that's going to increase our price by 7 cents. It makes it harder for us to compete with Scooters, Starbucks, all of these other, Walmart, Menards, anybody that sells plants and trees. So that, that alone for us is another big thing. We want to keep our customer pricing affordable so that people can still afford to come out and shop and buy the things that they enjoy, because what we sell is a luxury. It's not a need, it's a want. It's something that people want and enjoy. So that is a big part of that. I also think that when you're looking at the map, and I don't know, if you have seen this, well, you guys see it, but I don't even know. These are maps that Judy had emailed me. But we're in this little area right here. And there's no room for you guys to go anywhere north. And actually north of us is city-owned property already, okay? And that area did not get annexed in. So can you tell me why, when you guys have a city auction and there's gravel pits and stuff over there, why is that not annexed in? Why is that not a part of this map on that side? Does anybody know? The city holding lot, where you guys you sell your cars and stuff? I don't think that's, because we're here on Roosevelt. This is us. So we own from Roosevelt to Wilson, and then over to the south.
It is.
Are you guys I needed street maps
It
and I
goes all
couldn't
the
get
way
them.
up here.
No,
So
but
you're
I'm,
like right in there, it would go all the way up there.
we're right here. This is Roosevelt. So this is us.
Right.
This,
So this is already in city limits over here. This
Right.
is Roosevelt.
right. But we're here. And this is the highway, and this over here is all city impound.
Right, and that's why it
It's
stopped,
not.
is because the highway goes right there.
Right, but it's not included in city limits.
And we can always add that too. I mean, if that's something that we.
No,
need to do,
I'm
we
just
follow that.
asking, I mean, you guys aren't growing it. You're not gonna grow any more to the north of where we're at. And I think that this little tract of land is so small. If you guys would, I'm just asking really, if you guys would just maybe consider not voting for this one little section of this map until you actually went out there and looked and seen what is all out there. You know, as, you know, Mr. Erickson was just up here talking about Weathercraft, he's out there too. But for us, we have 12 acres. And is it gonna be our burden to, if you guys decide to annex later, is the burden gonna be put on us for infrastructure? Are we gonna have to pay for city water? Are we gonna have to pay to have city sewer put in there? And I own the 12 acres on that whole side. There's nothing else. There's residential properties. As you keep going south, there's a few there, and then you've got, you know, again, the golf cart place and TK's Welding and those places. So when you look at that as a whole, there really isn't anything there to develop unless you are planning on developing my 12 acres because, I don't know. I would love to be able to develop our land maybe later on, but right now, as it sets, we would really like to stay inside or outside of the city limits and continue to do our businesses and take care of our customers. We do want to give back to North Platte. I think we're at an exciting time in North Platte. We've got some challenges to overcome. But when you look at this little teeny tract of land, if it's just about squaring up an area to make our city limit map more even and not jagged, you're affecting people's livelihoods by doing that. It's going to cause more burden for us. And it could, if we had to pay for city infrastructure, it could bankrupt us. We know we're a seasonal business most of the time, so.
Okay.
Any questions for me? No?
Okay, I just thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Anybody else want to appear? Please approach and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Joe Stroska. I'm an owner of 8 acres located at 2401 East 8th Street. I'm Scott Erickson's partner. So much of what I'm going to discuss, I think he's already mentioned to you. I did provide you guys with a letter. I believe you guys received that. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what, just to be brief, as I'm kind of wrapping up. Some of this I believe you hopefully may have already looked at. As I mentioned, I'm one of the owners of Weathercraft Roofing Companies, and we reside at 2401 East 8th. I live at 1010 South Bear Avenue in North Platte. I am not in favor of the land located at 2401 East 8th being included in the current vision of the annexation plan map for the following reasons. My Weathercraft Company business partner and I have not requested our property be annexed into the city of North Platte. Neither, I believe, have any of our neighbors' properties, many of which you've heard here tonight, to the east, south, and west. We all have long-established light industrial and heavy industrial type businesses currently producing often high levels of exhaust, odor, noise, vibrations, light, and I feel many people might feel this doesn't belong within the city limits. I know there's parameters that's already existing, but I think your typical citizen would be like, what is this doing in city limits? As well, the topography, floodplain, and transportation avenues of the Union Pacific Railroad, the Highway 30, 12th Street, creates a pocket of the above-mentioned businesses and properties. This pocket, I feel, is uniquely situated, and these constraints accordingly deserve some understanding that in the area at and adjoining to 2401 East 8th Street should not be added to the land use plan and eventually brought into the city limits.
if you do look at that, mention the map that Penny brought, I have on there as well, it literally is that pocket. And I understand in the plan that you guys have, had commissioned for you, it says you don't want to leapfrog and you want to be able to expand in those areas. In the case of your map, which you've provided, you're not necessarily leapfrogging, you're just not including this due to, I feel, the topography of it and the fact that you're not going to go north unless you go into that floodplain secretion land. And I don't know what you're going to build over there other than maybe a alligator farm a couple months of the year. So that being said, that's my second option, or my second issue to create as well. And I think you guys, as I saw, talked to Scott Erickson, my partner, a lot. Bringing the property at 241 East 8th Street in North Platte city limits would increase our property value and our tax position. For our state sales tax, I think you guys have gone over that. But for that reason, that is what we perceive a hardship on our business plan. And accordingly, that unforeseen hardship will create a hardship for us. So once again, and just tying everything up, for these above three reasons, I encourage you not to adopt the amendment of the land use and annexation plan unless it excludes the area that adjoins the property at 24 East 8th and my neighbors. And I've, once again, given you a nice little map to carve that out. So sorry about the look of it, but it's your map and that's the best I could do. So are there any questions? I know we've already kind of talked about this with Scott, but other than that, I thank you for all your time and all the staff of the city of North Platte. And I do understand you're trying to do this to create growth and betterment in North Platte, and that's not lost on me. These are just my feelings as the owner and business at 241 East 8th. So,
Thank you very much.
you bet. Thank you for your time.
Good evening.
Yes.
Keith Marvin with Marvin Planning Consultants. I think I can summarize this very quickly and very easily. I understand everybody's concerns. What you've got in front of you for the annexation chapter is basically there because of section, for your sake and your city attorney's sake, it comes out of 19903 in state statute. And the catch head is comprehensive development plan requirements, regulations, and restrictions made in accordance with plan considerations. And what I'm going to cite is out of item number 5A and B. And it says, when next amended after January 1st, 1995, an identification of sanitary improvement districts, subdivisions, industrial tracts, commercial tracts, and other discrete developed areas which are or in the future may be appropriate subjects for annexation. And item B, a general review of the standards and qualifications that should be met to enable the municipality to undertake the annexation of such areas. Okay? If you're going to annex this property, all we're doing is fulfilling statute for your comp plan. If the city council decides to do any annexations, the first thing you have to do is do a study, a detailed study of all the areas that you want to take in or look at or you think are eligible. That includes looking at potential revenues and costs associated with those areas of being annexed. And once you're done with that, by law, you're required to notify these people, I believe by certified mail, that you're annexing. So they have an opportunity to come in here and they'll know that they're being annexed. And not only that, but you cannot, as under state law, annexation provides that you cannot waive the 3 readings. You have to go through all 3 readings on annexation. So this is by far not annexing anybody. We are just following statute to identify subdivisions, industrial tracts, and those areas that could be or may be eligible in the future. Any questions?
Why didn't you choose that lot just north of the road there that they pointed out?
I don't know.
Okay.
We've started putting this together,
it's not gonna-
we started putting this together before COVID.
It was just a good boundary line, the road was a good boundary line.
Yeah.
But by putting this, okay.
This whole area that we're talking about, that all the concerns are coming from, we're not on past maps, this is all new. Okay.
Yes, Ty?
Can you walk us through how the priorities were established?
Okay.
And how that, and what kind of time frame you see the different priority levels?
Well, first of all, priority levels and timelines are driven by you folks. All I do as a planner is give you an idea of what could happen when. As far as the primary areas that are eligible, the other things that we have to meet by statute to annex is they have to be adjacent and contiguous, and they have to be urban and suburban in character. So, Mr. Riker, you made the comment, you asked the question about water and sewer on a property. Those are good pieces of evidence as to if it's urban or suburban in character. So that's part of what we do. So if you notice, we've got the airport area, it's contiguous to the city, it's city-owned property. You've got the railroad, from what we tell, they pay taxes in lieu of taxes. The city doesn't, to what we can find, gets no piece of that. And if you brought them in, you may get a piece of all that. So the priorities are those that are immediately contiguous and don't include a whole lot of going out and trying to jump over a lot of area. So longer range things may be, as the community continues to grow, those may become more and more of a priority. Ultimately, you guys decide the priority.
Would you walk through maybe the benefits so we clearly understand? So from the city's perspective, the benefits, obviously we've talked about increased sales tax. You end up with more land mass for like your blight and substandard percentage, your 35%. What are the other pros, if you were to make your pros and cons list, what are the other pros on the city's standpoint?
Okay. The pros, you mentioned sales tax, if it's a commercial or industrial use. Property tax. The other issue that I know that has been brought up is as you continue to blight areas, how close are you getting to that 35% point? That's where the railroad and the airport really make a big impact. Those, because they're not going to be hit hard, especially the airport, but it gives you a lot of land area in your corporate areas. The other thing is you've got properties that are on water and sewer. And I'm not trying to be flippant, but if I live adjacent to the city and I work in the city, I'm coming out of my house, I'm getting onto city roads, I'm using those city roads, but none of what I'm helping do, because I'm not in the city, is help pay for those. So people who live just on the outside of town, they're benefiting from the taxes of those that live in town. So, there's those benefits there. Plus, also, the other thing that I keep hearing is North Platte doesn't show much growth in population. Well, you've got a lot of population that sits right outside your city limits already. And I will tell you, I know one person in this, one of the red areas has asked to be annexed, but we can't annex them because we can't get there. They're too far away from the city limits. And they want to develop homes and other properties, but they can't be brought in at their request. So.
And I think one of the issues that I hear periodically, I want to see what your take is on this, that if a large retailer is looking to come to our area or a large employer, they're getting some skewed statistics on our community because we have, in essence, a lot of residential and business activity going on just outside of city limits. Is that a real issue or not, from your perspective?
It may be, but the techniques for analyzing population and that is so sophisticated now with things like business analysts through ArcGIS, that there's ways to pull that data out real easily if they're looking. But it doesn't hurt to have those numbers in there that you can argue with and fight with to get people in here. Remember, retail is all about, retail and that has been, I don't know about anymore after this last couple of years in COVID, has all been about rooftops. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess to end, all you're doing is adopting a map that shows where you may annex in the future. That's all you're doing. And we're going through and meeting statute. If you annex more, people will know.
And we're not stuck with any time frame by doing this?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I think some of the earlier drafts actually had a time frame on those priorities, and they have been removed. So those priorities are up to the council.
Any other questions?
Just one last question. Do you have to have priorities to meet a proper, in other words, can they all be the same priority, or do you need to have stage priority?
You could have it all as one big lump, but the priorities are there to at least give you some input as to where some things may occur, could be occurring early on.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Ed, you had some questions?
Yep, that makes sense.
Any other, one more? We have one more person. Thank you.
I don't know where you got the information where somebody wanted in on the deal down there, but everybody I talked to, I've been down there for 23 years.
Yeah, please approach, please state your name and your address, please.
I can't believe this. I've been down there, my name's Zane Zalid, I've been at 1803 East 10th for 23 years. I've been down there in that vicinity since '58. And there's nothing down there for you guys to put us into annexation. All you'll do is bring people out there to kill my precious birds that come in from the south because they want to do their bird watching or their animal watching. I don't need those people out there. We don't need the city annexation. I like to keep it like George Leroy and Sam Grassmeek. Keep that a natural place down there. I do not want that disturbed anymore. I just wish you guys would just leave well enough alone where we're at, from Roosevelt clear to the Crown Prince, or whatever they call it nowadays. After saying, just leave us alone. Leave us out of city limits so I can take care of my animals that I promised George and Sam Grassmeek that I would do. We got some rare animals down there that come in. I take care of those suckers, and I don't need them disturbed anymore.
Okay.
I just appreciate your time, but I just don't need be annexed and have all this. I hated that when they brought that overpass in. That just disturbed everything. I've got deer that come up, got baby deers that come up into my yard. I don't need all this. I just wish you guys would just consider that. Kind of put it like a park for me. If you're going to do anything, put it in for a park. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Shane.
Nice seeing you again. It's been a long time.
Okay, one more, yes? Please state your name and your address, please, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Lee Duran. I live at 1021 North Roosevelt. When I moved over there, it's of course light industrial. I have a trucking company. So when I went over there, that was the big thing. It was industrial. I could have my trucks. Not have to worry about, everything around there. When I went in there, at the time there was no city water. which I asked the city if I could get it. They told me no. About 6 months or so after I went in there, you put it down my street. I had to pay for it anyway. I'm not hooked up to it, but I had to pay for it frickin' anyway, which to me wasn't right. You know, I shouldn't have had to pay for it till I hooked up to it. But the only reason you guys want to annex us in there, and everybody that owns property in that area is here except for like 2 people, nobody wants it. The only reason you want it annexed in is to get higher taxes, higher money. There's nothing to develop there. There's no place to expand. You know, we just have a nice, peaceful little neighborhood where we're not bothered by anything. I see no benefit to annex it in other than a city money grab. And that's really all it's gonna be. Because there's no other benefit for it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions, anyone?
I'd make a motion to close public hearing as there are no more speakers.
Second?
Dwight, that passes 8-0, motion to close public hearing.
Very much. Public hearing's closed.
I have a question just for the future. If we vote on this tonight, it's gonna have 3 hearings, correct?
I believe it should.
My concern right here, right now, voting on this, is that 50% of the city council is gonna be turned over in 2 years, plus the new mayor. And I don't wanna vote on something knowing that I'm gonna affect the whole new realm of, people coming into the city hall. So if there's gonna be 3 hearings and we vote for it now, the new realm of people can discuss this further, correct?
I don't think this is a 3-reading issue, is
No.
it?
We would pass the plan, and then they would, you know, be able to choose when or if or not to annex anything or not annex anything.
So we're just gonna vote to approve.
Just
Plan, this is it, there's no 3 readings on this
No.
plan? Okay.
I'm just concerned about in 2 weeks from now or whatever,
Just a
we're
recommend.
gonna hold 50% new city council coming in.
Yeah.
How our vote tonight's gonna affect them.
I mean, it gets a plan in place, and then they can choose to ignore it or not. I mean, comp plans are nothing more than a piece of paper that says to the state that we have a plan. I mean, other than that, it doesn't really mean anything.
I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. No,
Well-
I'm with you. I mean, but
I mean, to Jim's point, I mean, I was curious, I was surprised there wasn't more concern about this at the planning commission. And it'd be interesting to know if the planning commission would have felt differently about it if people were lined up to express their concerns. I mean, I can't speculate how the planning commission would have felt. But a lot of this is about tax equalization. You know, actually, the lady that spoke there at the end, I think a lot of her comments are spot on. And a lot of it's about tax equalization. And so on that particular section of town, I think that's absolutely what the issue is about. But if I was the guy on East 4th or Front Street, I might say, well, they ought to pay the same tax as I am. So, I mean, it's a complex issue. I certainly am not opposed to punting this to have just some more time to think about it. But
I would like to see the city staff review. This is kind of a unique area of town. I mean, Zane and the other people talked about it. It's kind of a unique area, and there really isn't, I don't see a great development area. I certainly see it in other areas of our map. I mean, if we took that area out, I think we'd still have a viable plan, if you want my opinion. Yes.
Again, this is just a plan, and so what you're saying is we would go back later. So this is an overall plan, and we would go back to each section. So like take this, for example, this section of town, and we would do another in-depth analysis on that particular section before it was ever annexed. This just gives us a broad spectrum of what to look at and where to go look at, and there's nothing saying that we would even start with this first section that these individuals are worried about. We may be starting somewhere else. We may, possibly just start with the airport.
Yeah, Judy,
And then we would
if you
do
move
it.
this, it looks to me like it's a number one priority. If you move this down to a
It's-
number three priority, that might
Right.
be more palatable.
And that's something we could look at definitely too. And just because it is number one priority doesn't mean that that's the first thing we're gonna start with.
If
But
you want my
yeah,
opinion from what I'm hearing here, I think it ought to be a number three priority, but that's just my.
I'm curious, why isn't it? Go ahead, Jim. I'm
I'm
kinda
sorry,
curious.
Judy, we didn't mean to run you off.
Seems to me like this is kind of like a bridge to nowhere, and there's nowhere to go from there, and frankly, I think it wouldn't hurt us to leave that out of the city limits. That's just my opinion, and I understand this is just part of the process in case we decided later, but I think we ought to nip it in the bud tonight.
I'm kinda curious why that is designated as a number one priority.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Back when, I think Ty asked the question, why the priorities? Priority ones basically were ones that were basically adjacent and contiguous to the current city limits and had some sort of development to them already. That's the way we treated all of the number one priorities. And as Judy said, it's up to you folks where you go to study more. That may be one of the last areas that ever gets looked at, depending on how you folks want to approach it. But that was the basis for why it's a priority. One is that it's contiguous to the corporate limits, and it had development on it.
and a lot of it already has water and sewer that they are using.
That's my comment, is the development infrastructure that the city's already put in place. And two is, I don't think anybody, any city, I would just use caution with the notion that we would annex blank pieces of ground. When you annex into the city, the purpose of that annexation is purely the revenue that you're going to bring into the city. So if we don't have a plan, I mean, this is the group that came in tonight, but there could be a group of people that comes in and speaks on the South Buffalo parcel. And if we say no to all annexation, then the city doesn't grow. We get closer and closer to impinging on the 35% threshold for any future development opportunities in the city. So I just want you to caution that this is a plan. This is not annexation. Annexation's a whole different subset of rules that we have to follow. Consider that as you move forward. If you so choose to move it to the next council, the same discussion occurs a second time.
And as I mentioned, all we're doing is trying to abide by what statute requires it to be. So that's an area that's adjacent. It's got some, it may be been subdivided at some point. They're in there just because that's what statute guides us to do. So.
Just a couple quick comments on it is, I'm sure the discussion on micro-TIF in North Platte's looming, and the 35% barrier is going to become a bigger issue, and I think it's going to become a bigger issue across the state because cities like ours are going to be looking to have a two-prong approach of having good ability to be involved in TIF and for economic development, but also being able to effectively use micro-TIF for renovations. And so that, even though we might be like 23% today, tightening up to 35 could be an issue sooner than we might think if we want to engage in those programs. And we do have a really awkward area out on 8th, because I can understand if I was those businesses, you probably deserve a lot of notice to make your business plan adjustments that they commented on. I think that's really fair. But at the same time, you got to be careful as a city that you don't end up with so much activity on your rim that you've got all this activity who's paying, in essence, unequal taxes, but then, you know, if, in other words, if, I think we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on annexation, frankly. And now it's harder to catch up because frankly, there's more opposition to it. And a lot of it's about tax equalization. When you really boil it all down, that's the key issue here. And so it's a complex issue.
Okay, if we're gonna, the other thing too is, do we have a motion to approve this yet?
No.
There's been no motion yet, okay.
I move to adopt the recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for amendment to the North Platte, Nebraska Comprehensive Plan 2011, Chapter 10, Land Use and Development, and Chapter 11, Annexation, as completed by the North Platte Planning Commission with an amendment placing the annexation map with the updated annexation map plan to include the additional area in priority number 2.
I'm going to second, but I'd also like to move for an amendment, and that would be to take the East 8th area and move it down the priority notch by 1 step. Yes, and my thinking there is that those businesses deserve adequate time to make potential business plan adjustments, knowing that we're still going to have to go through the entire process on each specific property.
Second.
Okay, so, is that a friendly amendment? I don't know where we're at procedurally on this.
We need to vote on the amendment.
Okay, so the amendment would be, is we need to, we have a motion and second on that would be to vote on whether that area on East 8th should be priority 2 rather than priority 1.
Yeah, to clarify, I'm sorry, I mean that whole section of the
That
map
whole-
that we referred to,
like
that it just be.
Sroska described in his letter?
Yeah, the group that spoke today that has the existing business group, that
Okay.
just whole section, I guess I'm just wanting to think we put that in the second tier of priorities, so.
We have discussion on this.
Yes, we do, Ed, go ahead.
I'm curious, why not to move it to number 3, Ty?
Frankly, I think the tax equalization issue for that area is fair, but I just feel these people deserve a lot of lead time, I guess, or more lead time.
How would a movement to number 3 change that?
I'm not against that idea either. If we get it out of that first, if the council feels, you know,
I guess I'd like them, I don't know how the procedure is here, but I would much prefer to see it go number 3.
Yeah, let's withdraw, could you withdraw your motion on the amendment to make it priority 2?
yeah, I'd be willing to do that.
Second.
Or change it
I'll
to a
withdraw
number
mine,
3.
you withdraw yours, and then we can remake it.
No, you
Make
can
it
do
a
it.
number 3.
You move to make it number 3
We
priority?
can do that.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
That's second, okay. So now we have a motion to make that area on East 8th a 3 from a number 1 to a number 3 priority. So let's vote on that amendment. Is there any discussion, Ed? Did you
No,
want to make?
that's good with me.
Okay, let's,
Thank you,
want to
Ty.
just vote straight up on that, gentlemen. Okay, that passes 8-0. Now, Dwight, did you hear that?
Yes, that's just on the amendment,
On the amendment, so now we
from
have,
3rd, yes.
yeah, we have the motion to,
I
oh, I'm
have,
sorry, Ed, go ahead.
I have some discussion on the motion.
Okay, go ahead, Ed.
On page 13, medium to high-density residential. This is probably a question for Judy or Mr. Marvin. In the second paragraph, it says, "It is intended for this district to encourage different residential zoning classifications to be located throughout, instead of attempting to identify specific areas where key densities will be allowed. The plan recognizes that various zoning and densities may reside next to each other throughout the community. The area should include all types of residential uses depending upon the zoning classification, including single-family, detached dwellings, with upon the zoning classification, including, with occasional townhomes, condominiums, and multifamily apartment developments." I attended a zoning conference in Kearney, I think it was in February, maybe January, it doesn't matter. And I asked this question specifically about one of the presenters, of one of the presenters there, who was, I believe, the gentleman that has the position that Judy has in Lancaster County, or maybe Lincoln proper. I'm sorry, I didn't ask the question. Another person asked the question at this meeting. And the question was, are you saying that we need to have apartment houses mixed in with multi-million-dollar homes? And the answer that was given was yes, but I don't think we can get there yet. That disturbed me greatly. I don't have $1 million home. I'll never have $1 million home, and that's fine with me. But I suspect that the folks that have $1 million home don't want an apartment house next to it. And that concerns me that this language may very well accommodate that. And I don't think that's what we should be about. I was very disturbed when I heard that comment at the conference in Kearney. I just throw that out to you guys. And maybe that's not the intention, but it sure seems to be moving in that direction. And I can't imagine if I owned $1 million home that I would want to have, in all likelihood, the devaluation of my property with an apartment complex next to it. And so I throw that out. That was the answer that was given at the conference in Kearney, and I throw that out as just a comment.
Ed, was that for one person opinion, or was that the general opinion of the whole group?
This was the presenter at the conference, Glenn. One presenter at the conference, that's correct. He was the Planning and Zoning Commissioner, I believe. Don't quote me, I think it was Lancaster County, but it may have just been Lincoln proper. But he was the presenter at that particular meeting, yes, one person.
But that does not necessarily make him right.
I understand that. Just wanted to voice the concern.
Yes, come on forward, please, sir.
I can answer that question. And you're right, that's exactly what it is. And it's in there only because the legislature this last session approved a bill called the Missing Middle Bill. And it was signed by Governor Ricketts. And it impacts communities 20,000 people or bigger. This is just a first step since we were updating the policy to make that first move. Doesn't mean it's going to show up in the zoning at this point in time. This is just getting us ready to comply, getting you guys ready to comply with that legislation that was pushed through this last session.
Correct me if I'm wrong, do we have to adopt this?
You have 5 years to put this into place. And they want annual audits on how you're performing.
So this would be the first of the 5 years, so we would still have 4 more years to adopt it.
Yes. Well,
At which time then this could be completely removed from
Yes,
the state statute?
yes, it could.
Okay.
But it would take a change in a new bill and everything to pull that out.
I understand that.
It just seemed appropriate, since we were doing this, to at least put it in the comp plan policies for this point in time.
It seems to me like this is one place where we shouldn't be on the leading edge.
Just for my clarification, Keith, you mentioned the word policy.
Yes.
Is this a policy directive or a plan?
The comp plan acts as a policy document. How you implement the policy is through the zoning code. So we may establish the policy, but you may not adopt the implementation of that policy until 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
But if I understand you correctly, according to the current state statute, we have to begin adoption of that policy within 5 years.
Yes.
As the current statute is legislated.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any further?
I do have another question. Again, I don't know who this needs to be addressed to, but On page 25, it says density bonuses can be used to encourage developers to preserve natural space within their developments while still developing approximately the same number of lots can do this. The following two diagrams show how clustering concepts can be used to develop the same number of lots in a smaller area, thereby preserving natural features such as tree clusters. There's no diagram. The following page, the following two diagrams, I have two blank pages at the bottom of 25 and 26.
I apologize, the diagrams are actually on 24.
I know a couple of the concepts that are out there in housing development are the ideas of like common garden areas. And I don't know if those are getting much legs across the state, but common garden areas and then these kind of common yard parks. And so you're seeing, I know in adjacent states and maybe a little bit in eastern Nebraska, you're starting to see more of these developments that have small individual lots and then these common area aspects. Is that fair? Yeah. And so I think that's the concept there a little bit through that section.
So given that scenario, and that does make some sense, who owns that property?
Typically an HOA.
So this would be part of a homeowner subdivision, and then the subdivision would be responsible for all maintenance and upkeep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like take the garden example, for example, you could see a homeowners association that charges a fee and then you have a common garden area with common watering, they share tools, that type of concept. You're seeing some of that out there.
Is that a mandated thing or is this something that's an option?
It's an option. The other place it can be used, and you don't have any wetlands, I'm being sarcastic, in the area. If a developer had a piece of ground that had some wetlands, but they had good developable land, this would be a way to protect the wetlands, but give the developer the ability to still develop at a reasonably good density to make their money on the property. So it's a win-win.
What threw up the red flag is I didn't know where the diagrams were.
I'll move the diagrams.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor we need to vote on, gentlemen.
Just a question, I
No,
guess,
go ahead.
one final question. I think it's a final question. What happens if we don't support this tonight? Then where are we at? If we vote against it, then where are we?
We don't have an annexation plan by statute, so if you go to try and annex properties, we're sunk before we get started.
Could you have Judy step up to the microphone?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry,
couldn't hear her.
Dwight. Yeah, Judy, could you step up? I think we can.
Sorry, I apologize. If you don't adopt this, then you're not following state statute, so you don't have a comprehensive plan that has an annexation plan component of it. And ours that we currently have is very, very, very limited. And so if we went and tried to annex property, we wouldn't have anything to back us in order to do that. And we would basically be sunk before we started.
So when can you revisit that then? Is there a time or statute of time where you,
We'd have to just restart over and do a plan again.
I mean, you can
Yeah.
come back in a month from now?
Yeah, I suppose we could. We could come back with a different plan.
Or the same plan?
So by moving it back from 1, 2 to 3, I think we're doing the same thing. You still got the plan, but it's going way out here now, it's not right here.
See, and I can live with that because when the new city council members and the new mayor takes over, at least we've moved that one area to a lesser priority, and I like that.
Well, and I know I said this earlier, but a couple looming issues is the push on that 35% could be a real deal if we want to be an active user in microTIF. I think that's a real issue. And second, if you look at where where our I mean, we're kind of out of residential development area within the city limits. And now you're talking more about west and south likely, but I think we need to be ready to annex. Again, each one of those annexations is gonna have its own multiple hearings and very specific information and input. But I think the city does need to be prepared for this. I see this being, I see us having a lot of annexation discussions in the next 5 to 10 years as a community. I think we are, frankly, I don't mean any disrespect, but we are a little bit behind the 8 ball on it, in my opinion.
We got a motion, gentlemen, if you want to vote on it, we'll take her up or down.
It's been a while since you made it.
Motion as amended.
Motion as amended. Okay, Dwight, that motion passes 7-1.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate all your input. Okay, we can move forward to item number 8. And this is an annual report on conditional use permit granted on September 17th, 2019 to Justin Warner, allowing a wholesale nursery and greenhouse with accessory retail in a A1 transitional agricultural district located in the 2000 block of West Eugene Avenue.
And I understand there's no action to be taken on this, is that correct, Mayor?
That is correct. There's no action. It's just an informational report.
Justin, you want to? So, Justin, are you going to make the report to us?
I believe it's Judy, isn't it? Is she going to make the report?
Judy, you want to come on up? And then, all right. Thank you. I didn't create confusion, Justin. That's all right.
You should have all received a copy of the report, and basically, it's just giving you an update of where he's at in the process. The conditional use permit was granted, a little over a year ago. The property owner has, requested and gotten a permit for a, fence. So he started with the fencing portion of his project, and has started doing that. And that's as far as he's gotten. You do have, some pictures there of the fence barrier that is being put up. So there's really not a whole lot more to report to that, but that's where he's at in the process. One of the conditions of that conditional use was that you receive an annual report every year on the progress, and that's where the progress is at this point, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Let's see, this is just a report.
Judy, can I ask you a question real quick on it?
Yeah.
I don't know who you guys sent out there, but is this still running within a normal time frame for a project like this?
We really don't put too big a time limits on there. I mean, he didn't say he was going to be done in a year or 2 years. We didn't put in an extended time limit. So, yeah, fencing permits are good for a year. He did it. He probably needs to come in and get another fence permit because he hasn't completed with it yet, but he would do that if we asked him to.
Okay.
But he continues to work on it. It's slow. But we didn't have a hard, fast time frame on when he had to be done with the project.
Have you guys had any complaints about the property in terms of like, there being problems or anything like that?
We've had a few complaints on the property. Every once in a while, we'll get a complaint with weeds. We did send a letter out to him to mow up some weeds and pick up his property. So that did occur. There was some junk and trash that was out there that we did get a complaint on, and we asked him to clean it up. Yes.
Thank you. Judy, any questions,
I
Judy?
think actually the site has been cleaned up substantially from where we began.
Yeah, originally when he got the conditional use permit, it was pretty junky at the time.
The big piles of
Yeah.
Rubble and earth have been removed, and
Right.
there's some smaller piles of gravel and rock there, I believe, and it's certainly a lot more presentable than it was a year ago at this time.
Yeah.
If I make a statement too, I can't remember your name. Justin. You know, you were really going pretty good on that fence, and then all of a sudden it quit, and I just kind of wondered as to why you stopped that process, because it was looking really good.
We just picked it up again like
said I need to go renew my permit, but I just got.
Whoever is talking needs to step up to the podium.
Yeah,
I'm not
sorry.
sure who is talking.
Oh, that was my fault.
I'm sorry, Mayor, this is Jim Backenstoss. I was just asking about the fence. He started off really gung-ho and was going really good, but it's been stagnant for quite a while, so I was asking as to why.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Justin did comment on that. And, Dwight, I guess another issue, Mike, are you here wanting to testify?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we do have a person here wanting to testify. Are you going to allow that on this matter, Mayor? It's no action, annual report. I'm just asking you.
Sure, yeah, go ahead and let him speak.
Okay, well, Justin, go ahead and you can talk and then Mike will have a chance.
I did also get the floodplain that they required.
Okay.
The flood plan, I should say, as well. This slow progress, I just got busy.
Okay.
But we picked it up again, work's slowing down, and I intend to finish that whole east side this year, still.
Thank you. Mike, could you approach and state your name and your address, please?
My name is Michael Cook. I live at 1906 West Eugene Avenue, the property just adjacent to the east of 2000 Eugene Avenue. I prepared a packet of pictures and other information for each of the members of the council and the mayor, so I won't take much of your time. I do want to say, though, that this meeting concerning the extension of the conditional use permit, there are some issues that need to be talked about. Following the approval of this permit, Mr. Warner, the owner of the property, was sent a letter on October 1st, 2019 by Ms. Clark, City Planning Administrator, advising the following. A copy of that letter follows in the packet. That the City of North Platte Council has approved the conditional use permit for a wholesale nursery and greenhouse operation with accessory retail at 2000 West Eugene Avenue. Approved. Ms. Clark further advised Mr. Warner of the conditions that the council placed on this permit. I provided the council with a copy of that letter so that you can compare what Mr. Warner was to do with what has occurred. Item 1, Mr. Warner has submitted a site and building plan, called the plan, for approval by the City Engineering Department. However, the plan does not address the following. How will he provide potable water sufficient for a commercial business? This would require an approved treatment facility for public drinking water. Number 2 was address a commercial sanitary sewer septic system, including sufficient leach field or holding tank that complies with the applicable city code. A light study and placement of commercial lighting that will not create a disturbance to adjacent owners. I will advise the council that her letter places a limitation or a time frame for this process to take place. Number 2, Ms. Clark's letter requires a storm management plan, which is not reflected on Mr. Warner's site building plan, although he has deposited several yards of dirt on the site, which has raised the property level on a portion of the property. The following question remains unanswered in the site plan. How will Mr. Warner provide for surface water containment on the property? For example, based on Mr. Warner's plan, a 1-inch rain will provide 38,130 gallons of runoff, 13,330 gallons from buildings on his sketch, and 24,800 gallons for a 200 by 200 paved parking lot to allow for large truck parking. A 3-inch rain would generate 114,390 gallons of runoff. Item 3, I must assume that at the time Mr. Warner's plan, at this time, Mr. Warner's plan has not been reviewed or approved by the City Engineering Department, and that the city inspectors have not been provided with any criteria by which to inspect any progress in developing this site. It was my understanding that at the time of the approval of this conditional use permit, there was to be sufficient development on the property within a year of the approval, as it is customary for this type of permit, or the applicant must resubmit a request for the conditional use. Item 4, a 6-foot privacy fence will be constructed along the east, west, and south side of the property to screen the project from neighboring properties. A permit was issued for the construction of a fence on November 8th, 2019, and 180 feet of fence was constructed in November 2019 on the east property line. Until last week, no additional fence had been constructed. In conversation with the city permitting clerk, it is my understanding that this type of permit is only valid for 6 months and must be renewed if not completed during the year. It should be noted that at this rate of completion, it will take approximately 9 years to finish the remaining fence and be compliant with the conditions of the conditional use permit. Item 5, a truck turnaround will be constructed on site. This requirement has not been completed at this time. However, once the project is completed per the proposed site plan, the truck parking area will address this requirement. Item 6, ingress and egress from the property will need to be approved by the Lincoln County Department of Roads. This means of ingress and egress to the property will need to provide for semi-trucks and other commercial vehicles, as well as customers with sufficient parking on site. In conversation with Ms. Odell, Lincoln County Roads Director, she advised me that Mr. Warner had discussed placement of a culvert for access to the property, account his intent to place a residence on the property. This conversation had occurred in March of 2017. However, there has not been any conversation concerning access to the property for commercial use following that date. I should note that Eugene Avenue is a narrow county road at this location and is currently not of sufficient width to provide for commercial access to the property. In conclusion, I would note that Mr. Warner, doing business as Creative Landscaping LLC, has continued to use this property as the staging area for his landscaping business and material storage. There appears to be no effort on his part to follow up on the construction of a nursery at the site, as he indicated to the Planning Commission and City Council. I have attached a copy of the city zoning code portion applicable to 156.042 conditional uses for your review. In particular, I would call your attention to part 322 standards, as it applies to the various requirements associated with this conditional use permit and the fact that the property owner has failed to respond to these requirements during the following year. It is my understanding that an important part of this conditional use permit, when approved, was the time limit imposed on Mr. Warner to comply with the restrictions placed by the council. I believe Mr. Warner has failed to make a conscientious effort to comply with these conditions, and that the council should revoke the conditional use permit and instruct Mr. Warner to resubmit a request for a new permit that complies with the city's conditions as addressed in the current permit. Thank you for your time. I might add, I have also included copies of both of those portions of the city code, as well as my comments at the original meeting where approval was made. Those comments still stand true, as he has failed to make the property a reasonably attractive or complied with the conditions that the city council placed at that time. I've included pictures where the statement was just made. There's minor piles of dirt on the property. There's minor changes to the property. If you will look at the pictures that are included in my presentation to you, you'll see that the weeds on the property, some of which exceed 4 foot in height, are all over the property, except where he has basically used the property to drive as a driveway for his commercial vehicles. I might also add that he was instructed to clean up the property. He did clean up a portion of it on the east side, but there remains weeds along the Eugene Avenue. There's weeds associated with the south end of the property. There's weeds and materials stored against the west side of the property. There's also, or until yesterday, there was a pile of salvage material piled up, which apparently spontaneously caught on fire yesterday. And the reason that I'm interested in that was I had applied, had applied a couple of times to the city asking for a burn permit so that I could burn some weeds and debris that I had in my burn pit, and was told that no that no burn permits were being issued at the time. I called yesterday afternoon when I saw the fire over there. I said, can I come down too and get a burn permit? And they said, yes, you can. And I said, great, I'd like to, I'll be down in the morning. This was at about approximately 6 o'clock in the evening. They said, why are you asking? I said, well, my neighbor must have one. And they said, no, we haven't issued any on Eugene. There are no burn permits over there right now. So I said, well, there's a fire over there right now. And he said, well, we'll check into it. Next thing I know, there's a fire truck over there putting out this pile of debris. There's a picture of that pile of debris included in the presentation here today. If, I believe you should have a couple of pictures that speak for themselves. One of them is a panoramic that I took.
Mr. Cook, I'm going to ask you to complete your statements, please.
I'm going to right now, Mayor. If you take a look at the one, it's a picture from Google Earth taken in approximately 2016, shows that piece of property from the same location before it was purchased by Mr. Warner. Then if you look at the panoramic, that is at the same location, and that's what the property looked like a week and a half ago. Tell me that it's an improved piece of property. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. This has no action to be taken by us tonight, so we thank you for your information. Any further comment? I'll consider the matter concluded. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
We'll move on to item number 9. Unless there's any council members like to say anything. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, and that is to adopt a resolution approving claims and authorize the issuance of warrant to Paulson Inc. in the amount of $101,586.40, and a warrant to Municipal Light and Water in the amount of $765 to pay approved claims and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 3874 relating to warrant financing passed and approved on May 21st of 2013.
I move that we approve the claims as presented in the materials.
Second.
Mayor, that motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 10, which is claims.
Move that we pay the claims.
Second.
That's me.
Mayor, that motion passes 8-0.
Thank you all. Always appreciated.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, Mayor. Is that okay?
Thank you, everyone. Your time is truly appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Mike.
you and your wife get well, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Jimmy.
Thanks for all your support.
Thank you.
And best of luck.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
Yeah, best of
Said,
luck.
working with you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.